Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Veterans Day, and welcome to today's webinar, 5 Drivers Creating Leading Vendors in the Data-Driven Marketing Economy, with TBR Vice President of Research, Stuart Williams, and Research Analyst, Evan Woollacott. I'm Justin Surgent, and I'll be hosting today's session. Insights from today's presentation are shared from TBR's Digital Marketing Technology Benchmark. If you'd like to learn more about this report, please reach out to myself or one of the analysts after the presentation. Before we begin, there are a few housekeeping items I'd like to cover. First, I'll be recording today's session and posting it on our YouTube site, TBRI channel. We encourage you to visit this channel to watch this presentation or any of the previous presentations we've posted. Second, I'll be following up with all of you via email with the link to the recording for today's presentation, as well as with these slides tomorrow afternoon, so please be on the lookout for that. And finally, we welcome questions on the material we're presenting today. Please send any questions you have through the Q&A function, preferably that over the chat function, as it's easier for us to sort through on this end, and we'll address as many as we can at the end of the webinar. And with that, I'd like to hand this over to Stuart and Evan.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We appreciate your attendance on this Veterans Day if you're in the United States. The key to the story that we're going to talk about today is that marketing is in the middle of what TBR calls the Customer Continuum. This is a series of 3 different service segments and customer engagement segments that enterprises are reinventing through the use of technology. The first segment is where we have audience engagement with paid and social advertising, and that's a space that we call the ad tech space. Second space is winning customers, where you have converted an audience member into a lead and you're driving them through to the sale. And that's covered by marketing technology, and that's a segment that we're going to cover today. And then after the sale, we have another segment where we talk about retaining the customer, and that's where you're using the insights you gathered throughout the process and the continuing insights about the customer's behavior and preference and utilization of your product or service, not only to expand their wallet share, improve their satisfaction, but to actually feed that back into your product's development. We see many more companies using agile or lighter weight or more iterative development cycles. So the process that is involved in working with the customer from not being a customer, being an audience member, all the way through the return customer and the customer continuum is critical. So within the marketing technology segment, we have 4 different elements to our taxonomy. There are many, many subcategories here, but we have marketing experience, which includes channels, social, email, community loyalty, customer experience. This is the high growth element of the marketing technology segment, and one where we see many siloed functions and a lot of potential connection into the advertising technology space. Then we have core marketing, the deepest segment of our taxonomy, which includes marketing automation, campaign management, content and experience management, e-commerce, and traditional CRM and Salesforce automation technologies. Wrapped around those, we have marketing operations, which is around about asset and resource management, call analytics, team and project management, web and mobile analytics. And underlying all of these separate applications is the audience data and the data management platforms that underlie this. And this is in many ways shared with and beginning to be integrated with the advertising technology data management platforms. So we're beginning to see vendors begin to develop first, second, and third-party data integrations across this customer continuum. And we believe that that's a foundational element, and we're going to talk about that in today's webinar. Our service uses those 4 segments. We track and analyze the business and operational performance of 17 leading and exemplar vendors on a worldwide basis. So here's a list of the companies we cover and some of the metrics that are in the benchmark report from which we pulled a lot of the vendor comparisons that you'll see in this presentation. So where are we at with this segment? The overall players that you can see in our benchmark are represented here in this bubble chart. where the vertical axis is the operating margin of the participating vendors, and the horizontal axis is the revenue growth of the vendors in this space. And there's a good distribution of vendors here, some of whom are like SAP, where in 2Q15, if you recall, the euro was at a very, very low exchange rate compared to the dollar, and so their revenues, when you convert them back to dollars, was negatively impacted. Doesn't change their underlying operating margin, which is quite profitable. On the other end, we have firms like Marketo, HubSpot, and IBM, which are experiencing high growth, but aren't the largest vendors in this space. Salesforce, of course, leads the overall collection of the vendors in this benchmark. However, they're the leader in what we call the cloud-native vendors, as buyers are beginning to really shift the way that they're purchasing software in this space from an on-premise model to an as-a-service model. And we believe that there's a lot of advantages to having that application delivered to you, particularly when it comes to the data integration and the flexibility of working with federated data models with your applications running on top of it. So, and that's kind of a spin-off from a lot of other advantages that we see in the cloud-delivered space. Key places here is that customer demand for data-driven marketing campaigns will continue to shift market vendor investment strategies, and that's really the key of what we're going to talk about today. What are the drivers that are behind the leading vendors in this new data-driven market economy? We've identified 5 different driving factors. The first one is operational maturity. We're at a stage of the evolution where there's been a lot of entrants into this field. There are a lot of very small or niche players in this space who are going through VC money, looking for growth, and we believe that we're at the cusp of a real roll-up period when the best-of-breed of these smaller vendors are going to get acquired or integrated. They'll either do it on their own, or they'll get bought out by private equity or acquired by some of the larger vendors. But in order to truly capture the opportunity as the dollars shift on the enterprises side from traditional marketing into more of this technology-enabled marketing is operational maturity. So your ability to redirect those resources and fill portfolio gaps so that you can get this customer continuum really covered. So we're beginning to think about, integrations or actual full life cycle between advertising, marketing, and customer service. We're beginning to see that with a few vendors. Second driver is the data platforms. So vendors with these underlying data platforms that cover the marketing life cycle are delivering compelling go-to-market value to customers. So that's the applications, from our point of view, really sit on top of these underlying data streams and act upon them, pass data back into them, and enable analytics-driven decision-making. So if you don't have the full data picture that integrates your first, second, and third-party data, using tokens as necessary and being well aware of security or compliance requirements, you're not going to be able to take full advantage of these new technologies. The third driver really comes back to what are you going to do with the data, and that's sophisticated analytics. Being able to make a smart decision about where to invest your dollars, your marketing, your advertising dollars, your customer relationship dollars, your sales effort and activity are the key decisions. And that's just from the enterprise's point of view. When you flip it around and you think about the customer's experience of the company, being able to monetize and track and build the pathways that truly deliver that experience that both the customer wants and that you want to deliver as an enterprise is important. So for vendors to win, being able to not only deliver the data, but to package insightful analytics on top of it that help with the life cycle decision-making process is a key forcing factor. Now, how you engage with the customers is the fourth driver, that omni-channel engagement, being able to break down the operational silos, break down the flow, and begin to truly touch the customers with appropriate content, at an appropriate context, is really key. And we're still starting to see better models for not only doing that on the desktop, but in the PC, and to get you the attribution information across that life cycle. It's happening dramatically in the advertising space, but being able to pull that back into the marketing cycle, because customers don't stop using their mobile devices once they've become a lead. They're still looking for information. They're still passing data back and forth between internal buying committees using multiple devices and different channels. And then the fifth force here certainly is the holistic portfolios. So when we get to the end game for this space, which we see happening in 3 to 5 years, the winners are truly going to be able to service the needs of the enterprise and the customer continuum from the beginning portion where you're beginning to target and segment audiences and put value on them and look at the opportunity, all the way through to service design, service delivery, and your ongoing relationship with your repeat customers. So a one-stop shop for all that digital marketing is indeed going to be a game changer. And we see that being built up either directly through a single portfolio, or it could be enacted through an ecosystem of closely federated vendors that that reduce the frictional barriers between each other for commerce point of view and from a data management point of view. And that's a little bit more of a challenge, but we see that holistic portfolio build as a requirement. So let's move into the first piece, and I'm going to turn the presentation over to Evan Woollacott, my colleague here, who's going to discuss a little bit about operational maturity.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar. Looking at the first key driver of operational maturity, we at TBR have we almost see two different dynamics coming in, where it's an emerging battle between the cloud natives and the holistic vendors, both coming for operational maturity from different ends of the spectrum. The holistic vendors, such as SAP and Oracle, all have large legacy businesses, traditional CRM, which they can use to generate resources to begin to move into new fields. So, for instance, in 2013, actually, SAP bought Hybris for the cloud push for marketing. And then in 2014, Oracle went ahead and grabbed Woollacott, which is their DMP play. They're able to do this because they can rely on their legacy business to get the free cash flow to move into these spaces. When you begin to look at the cloud natives, it's another story entirely, where they're looking to quickly build out their subscriber bases, accelerating investments around sales and marketing, things of that nature, to build recurring revenue streams. And at some point, we hope to see them shift and begin to become profitable. In 1Q15, Salesforce had its first quarter of profitability since, I think, 2010, and it was at about 1%, maybe 2%. That's going to be a key focus for us going forward, is can they continue to maintain profitability while still building out that base of subscribers. Looking at some of the statistics from the 2Q15 benchmark, the top 5 in revenue growth was led by the cloud, 3 of which was led by the cloud natives. Sugar CRM, Marketo, and HubSpot, who grew just about 60% year to year. Mixed into this growth, into the growth leaders, though, were the vendors, the holistic vendors making the most acquisitions. So you have your IBM, who bought Silverpop in 2014, and then you also have Oracle, who acquired Woollacott and Datalogix in 2014 and 2015, respectively. Looking at profitability, however, the tables turn, where the holistic vendors are now leading, with 4 of the top 5 being holistic. Oracle leading at about 50% in 2Q15. And then there's a very wide gap between the leaders and the laggards, where Marketo had a operating net loss of about 35% in 2Q15, and that it's a very accurate characteristic for the other cloud natives in that space during the quarter. Now I'd like to turn it back to Stuart so we can look at our second driver.
Great, Evan. Thank you very much. And that question about profitability certainly is one that will haunt a great many of the public vendors there. It's good to chase growth, but eventually you do need to be able to return at least to single-digit profitability for long-term sustainability. One of the things that we want to think about when we think about our second driver are the data platforms. We have our different segments here. I can orient you to this chart here. We have 4 different segments listed on the left, and those are really organized by the amount of business that the vendors are driving in each of those segments. So audience data management is the smallest or the lightest of those segments, and core marketing, your traditional CRM, is the cash cow at the base there. It's the foundation for a great many of the expansions in these areas, both for the vendors and for the customers. Now, when we think about the growth areas and the transformation here, audience data management really, we feel, and from our research with our digital marketing customer studies, really shows that this is really the entrance area here. Very high growth, not a lot of standardization, many questions, a lack of operational maturity on the part of the enterprises really position this as a key control point for vendors to begin to own because it's essential to all of the data-driven decisions that marketers need to make. If you're not getting integrated, accurate, timely data, you can't expect to make strong financial decisions. And marketing really wants to play at the table with the CFO and the CEO and own that outward face of the enterprise to the customer. They have to have this kind of data to be able to point to the effectiveness of the spend in that area. Now that's, of course, contingent on the vendors providing innovation and integrations in this space, as well as meaningful applications and analytics on top of this. Marketing operations, we feel, and marketing experience are currently where there's a mature growth opportunity for different vendors in this space who are bringing and integrating places in this area. But we really believe that, in the coming year, in the 18 to 36 month segment, this is the true battleground of audience data management. And how that shapes out will really determine the success with which the entire digital marketing space captures its potential. So when we think about the vendors who are playing in this space, core marketing, what we're looking at here is a pie chart that shows the revenue distribution between core marketing, marketing experience, marketing operations, and audience data management. Audience data management, and this is for the trailing 12 months up to 2Q15. The revenue that's counted by the 17 vendors in our benchmark is $14.3 billion. And audience data management is a small slice of that pie right now. All of the underlying operational experience and core marketing applications really need to begin to ride on top of this. The leaders in this space are SAP, Adobe, SAS, and Oracle just on a revenue run rate basis. But we see them all making investments in this area, and plus we see vendors who are on the ad tech side of the house, companies like Rocket Fuel, beginning to make investments and changes in the way that they run their data management platform. So in the future, there's going to need to be an integration between the ad tech evolution of the side of this house and the inside the enterprise marketing side of the house. So this is what we talk about when we think about a federated model that occurs between all of the partners that are involved in delivering experiences to the customer in advertising, marketing, and customer service. So let's take this to our next slide. And we're going to begin to talk about the analytics space. Okay, our third driver here really relates to the perception of vendors in the around whether they believe that marketing is a cost center or a profit center. And this comes from our customer research in both North America and Europe. And so what we see here in the charts is when we ask people about the perception of marketing, advertising, and public relations, is it a cost center or a profit center? North America, nearly 80% or more of respondents that are large enterprise indicated that, yep, these are cost center functions. whereas we see in Europe just over 60% of firms are really identifying as a cost center. And the subsequent data on this is this changing from one to the other? North America is still really focused on these functions as being a cost center function. And Europe, on the other hand, is focused more on transitioning these to a profit center function. Excuse me. This is a critical perception, and we believe that the CMO and the CEO need to get alignment on this because that customer continuum is in many ways the source of all value. Okay, that's a big claim, but you take it from the point of view of the customer is the one who decides to purchase from the enterprise. That's where all of the value comes, is from the customer. If you're not delivering, if you're not designing and delivering and making good on the promise of your brand or your product, you're not going to create the premium value that you want to have in the marketplace. So marketing and the activities across the customer continuum should be considered a profit function. So analytics is what's going to deliver the ability of the marketing function and the advertising function to be able to pinpoint what works and what doesn't along the customer continuum. The ability to do this, the ability to deliver on this type of a message and to truly help the CMO transform their business and to connect to the profitability of the firm will free up more dollars for vendors and will elevate the CMO's function. So this is one of those key long-term value propositions that we see being a critical driver for vendors in winning in this space. So let's go to the next driver here, where we're looking at the performance of vendors. So this is in our marketing operations segment, and obviously we're looking at some performance here that's shaped by acquisition in the case of Oracle, and we see the large areas here that are dominated by Microsoft, SAP, SaaS, but Adobe, again, is a kind of a surprise player here. Shouldn't be a surprise to those who've been using it because their perception of the underlying platforms has always been shaded by providing insight to the decision makers, the marketers, by using analytics on top of their platform. So we believe that part of the success of the Adobe platform is tied to the analytical perspective that's landed on top of the data platforms. Salesforce, of course, in the last 2 years has strongly driven its analytical message and is now starting to drive an analytical platform. That's, of course, is key. SaaS is itself an analytics player, but we see them lagging performance behind some of the other companies in this space where at one time they probably were one of the undisputed leaders in performing this. So yeah, we believe that SaaS, in paying attention to some of the other drivers in these areas about holistic suites, integrating the data platforms, and really driving the value of helping marketing become that profit center can help to realign their propositions in line with the strength of their intellectual property. So let's go to the next driver here, and I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Evan.
Hello. So what we're looking at on this slide is an interesting cut of data from the 2Q15 customer study we conducted. And what it's showing a considerable self-service gap for marketing and also some advertising functions where customers are actually using organically developed tools to do functions such as CRM. And what this does is it's a considerable opportunity for marketing, advertising, and service firms to come in with their solutions and replace these legacy tools. This is especially true in the SMB space, and a particular case study I want to look into is HubSpot and what they've been able to do. They've came out of nowhere over the last 2 years or so, and they've maintained revenue growth between 50 and 60%. And what they've been doing is they've offered their solutions to customers in a freemium model. And as they build up this freemium base, they will systematically update their portfolio with different tools which allows them to then use their sales team to usher these freemium users to extend their, increase their deployments with HubSpot, and then they can convert them into a paying customer. And their moniker, for those of you who do not know them, is Grow Your Business with HubSpot, which they've so far have been able to do successfully. So this strategy isn't limited to the SMB market. I mean, enterprise users can also, businesses can also benefit from this self-service gap. And for this, I would like to turn it back to Stuart to give us a view.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. So when we look at the data here on this chart, and we have the red bars that extend out, these are enterprises that are deciding to address this function by using homegrown tools or spreadsheets, right? So the key here is that this is largely not integrated. They're tied to internal practices, and this creates an opportunity for vendors to bring in a platform that not only may do this better, faster, cheaper, but also in a more integrated fashion, and also bringing along the vendor's kind of best-of-breed intellectual property on how to best do this. Many firms, we have a chart, we didn't include it here, that are just in the incipient stages of adopting and deploying marketing technology. We think only 5 to 8% of enterprises are going to scale at any one of these areas, not even across all these areas, functional areas. So there's a huge opportunity for vendors to capture the wave of maturity, the wave of business as enterprises begin to adapt and integrate these tools, and particularly to the point to begin to integrate from the customer lifecycle point of view. Follow that customer continuum from end to end, and beginning to tie in everything from your demand-side platform, your use of ad exchanges, the experience delivery that you're going to be using through multiple channels, being able to target and assess people, manage your content, pull those people back into your CRM and your sales systems, your pricing, optimization and delivery, your transactional systems, and finally, back into your operations and service automation delivery pieces. That life cycle is, again, to hit upon one of the keynotes we're trying to hit, is founded upon data and the flow of data back and forth across this life cycle with the applications appropriate to each function integrated to that data stack. So let's go to our last driver here. We have a little bit more view into the life cycle. So again, this is marketing experience revenue, where we have firms that have been making a lot of entrance into this space and driving the business. We see some firms that are driving this, like IBM with its SilverPop acquisition. Oracle, has made its acquisition. Microsoft Core here with its dynamic CRM. But again, there's some laggards in this space, and that's largely around some of the content or experience management. So we see Constant Contact, which just got announced for an acquisition, just over $1 billion late last week. Jive Software, which has been struggling of late to drive new growth around its platform. And OpenText, again, which is in content management, has a very successful partnership with SAP, who again is capturing some growth here. But the key message is that experience management needs to be integrated into the rest of the life cycle to truly capture the customer spending opportunity. It just won't be enough. It'll be table stakes to offer different omni-channel or experience. You need experience integration in order to capture it as a vendor, and that's where the marketers really want to go. They want to bulldoze some of the silos and get to effective use and deployment. And it's not just being able to deliver into the different experience channels, but to manage the share of influence that each channel has through attribution. How does, your Facebook, your Twitter, your other social channels, your company's website, influencer blogs, all of the sundry different influencer paths that you can utilize, play as you begin to build your business. So let's now talk about the holistic portfolios here. So when we look at the revenue that's been tracked in our benchmark for our 17 different vendors, called that out earlier, we look at the mix of the different vendors by segment, and the shape of the business hasn't really changed tremendously. The total volume has increased. When we look at the growth, which is the bottom chart here, kind of segment by segment between the year-over-year business, we see some strong growth in marketing experience at 22.4%, 8% growth in core marketing, which is good considering the volume of that business. Strong growth in marketing operations and nearly 30% growth in audience data management. We actually believe that that segment will not only grow on a dollar basis, but the growth rate will begin to accelerate because the maturity of firms, enterprises in adopting DMPs and audience data management platforms is increasing. Their readiness is increasing as they become more comfortable with the technology-enabled marketing, also called digital marketing, and the need for them to have this data integration is beginning to bubble up. So we believe that's a latent opportunity as we go into the future. And again, a core driver for firms is to be able to tie each of these elements together. You may be an Oracle or an SAP or an Adobe that can begin to tie all of these different elements together into a single platform, or you may be a participant in an ecosystem, and that's where we see firms like Microsoft potentially being able to expand its influence, being able to bring in its cloud-based assets with Azure, and then add in an ecosystem that might draw upon or mirror its CRM activities. So it has machine learning, it has analytics, a lot of things are available to ISVs to be able to play on that platform, and they can get that to play. That could be a strong potential scenario for growth in the future around that Microsoft platform. Again, there are other platforms that might be available. Open source could run on the Amazon platform at scale as well. So that's another potential opportunity there. So let's take this home and start to begin to take some questions from our audience.
All right, so just a reminder, please send any questions you have through the Q&A function, and let's begin with what we have. So we have a question on terminology. Does audience data management equal DMP?
Yes, to an extent, audience data management equals a data management platform. That, from our point of view, would be kind of first-party advertising data where you're tracking cookies or device IDs, but more and more with companies like Facebook coming in with their person-based marketing, you're getting identifiable information about people that can readily be converted into a lead. So we're looking at audiences as being non-identified, no PII tied to this data, and then the second portion really is where you have marketing information, personally identifiable information about that individual. So you have an email address, even a physical mailing address that you could send them a flyer or something. Direct mail ain't dead, and be able to work that channel as well. So true data platform needs to integrate both of those, as well as tie into your known customer base and all of the different people. If you think about a complex enterprise sale, there's buyers, there's influencers, there's users, implementers, all through that whole ecosystem. So it becomes quite complex.
All right. Excuse me. Next question. So you have emphasized the 5 drivers and how they create leaders in the DMT space. Are there any vendors you have covered who have met this criteria?
So to state that, no. We don't believe that any single vendor has met all of these criteria. Some of them come close. When we look at the ability of companies, Oracle has devised a very strong CX portfolio end-to-end, but the integrations across all of the different platforms that are inside those offerings aren't complete yet. SAP is taking a slightly different approach in building that out, but they haven't added the ad tech elements to this experience. So they're relying on partners like Turn who can help them manage the advertising technology elements of this. We do believe that the need is there, and there's a distinct requirement for vendors to be able to address all of these, even within, even if they're just playing within a niche area of this space.
All right. The next question: how do walled gardens play into the long-term strategy for companies, given the lack of ability to get data out?
So this is the Roach Motel question, right? And you know, this is this is where I talked about the audience, the data management platform, really as a control point. Whoever owns that data kind of owns your business. And so when we think about all of the different service players that are involved in the customer continuum, you have the enterprise itself. You have any partners that they're using who have some lead management or other inbound pieces to it. You may have advertising companies that you're working with on the audience side who may not be revealing all of the different data points that they're collecting nominally on your behalf, but they can also reuse that for their own business. The transparency of this data may be more important than the actual ownership of it. I may be very happy to have a vendor say, hold on to the credit card numbers for me if they're a transaction processor in the e-commerce space, and I merely get the tokens to each credit card number that I can associate with my buyer, rather than having the problem of owning the credit card security and all of those elements. So I'm not saying you have to own it all, but there's definitely requirements to this. Now, on the vendor side, this is the red meat portion of our portfolio, right? You want to own about as much of this as you can as a vendor, and then work with the federation of that data into your platform. So the more of the data, the more of the customer continuum that you can own the data for in your platform, the more applications that you can tie to the analysis of that data. So again, it becomes stickier and stickier as you collect that data. Companies like Salesforce, people have been putting a lot of that information in there. They have not yet kind of gone fully into the advertising side there, but we anticipate if they did, they would become even more sticky. From the customer side, we do see some rising questions around, you know, compliance, data export, and how I manage that.
All right, next question. How can the smaller vendors, who may be lacking in some of the 5 drivers, compete with the likes of Oracle or SAP? How can they build out their strategies to encompass the gaps they may have?
Sure. Obviously, there is a huge amount of technological innovation that's going on in the smaller vendors in this space. They're taking and creating unique solutions to very specific user stories and use cases in this environment. So there's a significant amount of technology that still needs to get built out. That said, how do you turn that into a winning business? And one of the strategies that we talk about certainly is the up and out strategy. You know, build it on a platform that's delivered by one of the major vendors, grab, you know, a significant amount of enterprise customers and get acquired. That's a traditional and time-honored exit strategy. Another way to work this is to work in a more of a federation approach, where you may have, say, a series of open source software where the code itself is transparent, but you're servicing it. And we see, you know, that you can still have significant amounts of differentiation around an open source package. And one of the things that we see resulting from open source is that the innovation pace there and the adoption can be quite rapid. When we look at how containerization technology has really very, very rapidly moved its way into the virtualization space and kind of turned that space upside down, that's driven by open source to a great extent, and people are making money off of the service of that. And then the last layer is the data economy itself. So a lot of firms are offering the service maybe on a basis where it's nominally priced, but they collect all the data on the backside, and there are additional insights that you can deliver. This was one of the data logics plays, by owning that data, the basket level retail data, they were able to cut it and slice it and provide insightful analytics back to the customer on a pay-per-sip basis. So again, the data economy comes from controlling and accessing the data. So these are all ways that vendors can begin to drive share and create value in their business, not just by delivering the technology, but in the business models that are connected to it.
All right, another question came in here. Are you recommending build versus buy?
For whom? Vendors or for enterprises? Certainly, when we talk to enterprises, they are at a fairly introductory stage of moving through the maturation process of not just adopting the technologies, but changing their business processes and changing their internal culture. So we would believe that an enterprise should be buying as much of this as possible, because many of the functions that are delivered by these by the marketing technology vendors are not unique to any one particular business. It's the integration of those business, how you put it into your business process. Your business process as an enterprise are generally, particularly on the customer experience side, should be unique. The way you handle transactions, process a credit card are not unique, right? The way you capture a customer record probably is not unique. The way your sales team diagnoses and qualifies leads is not unique. So those are the areas where the provider, the vendor in this space, can provide very, very strong and a rapidly evolving intellectual property. You buy innovation from them rather than having to build it yourself. In many instances, I would suggest that probably 90% is probably better to buy than build.
All right, next question. What exactly is the niche vendor class you have built into this research? How are vendors in this group faring?
Yeah, so the niche vendor class is a collection of vendors that really belong. Looking for the chart here that calls them up. These are some of the smaller vendors. If we look at slide 8, Justin, it's a collection of the smaller vendors that are very focused on a specific element across our whole digital marketing technology space. So this includes companies like Jive, SAS, OpenText, Constant Contact, SDL, Teradata, and some of the autonomy functions that are within HP. So these are vendors that are within a single element of a very broad taxonomy. Doesn't mean that they're not driving a large business, but they're within an area. And so when we look at a company like Constant Contact that was a standalone business up until a week ago, now is part of a holding company that is going to add to it or sell alongside of it, web hosting services. It's a whole federation of marketing and marketing support, IT functions, to which the email contact and email list management functions are going to be added. Yep.
All right, I think that's all we have for questions. So I'd like to thank Stuart and Evan for your presentation today, and thank you everyone for listening in and for sending over your questions. You can follow our analysts on Twitter, and follow our analysts and TBR on Twitter and the handles listed here, and please check out our pages on SlideShare and YouTube for our previously aired webinars. I would like to remind you all I'll be following up with you all via email tomorrow afternoon with the link to today's recording as well as with the slides, so please be on the lookout for that. Before you sign off, we'd like to ask you to take a brief survey on the webinar today. We're always looking to improve both the information we provide and how we provide it to you, and we do read all those comments, and we do alter our presentations based on what you have to say. So we'll leave the chat function open for another minute or so for people to ask any last-minute questions. Otherwise, thanks for attending and have a good afternoon.